Good morning and welcome to BBOC Live, presented by BetMGM. This is the Final Four college basketball betting preview. It's 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. I'm Stuckey, and joining me for today's show are Charlie DiSturco, Anthony Dabbundo, and the one and only red-hot prop doctor, Nick Giffen, who's filling in for Mike Calabrese, who suffered an injury victory lapping Tennessee's loss last weekend. We will get to both games, give out our favorite picks, a lot of props, some totals in just a moment. But before we do get started, I want to remind everyone, make sure you download the award-winning Action Network app. You can find all of our bets there in addition to an abundance of data and content for today's slate and beyond. And as I previously mentioned, BBOC is presented by North Carolina's newest sportsbook, BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, before we dive in, Anthony, you're defending the officials last night in the controversial call.
Well, look, I understand the idea that the game is officiated a certain way and we're going to let some things go and not other things. But there were other illegal screens called in that game multiple times, in fact, on UConn. And it was very clearly, if you look at the replay, a correct call. And if you don't officiate the game the correct way, that's also a choice to impact the outcome of the game. Imagine the outrage if she sets an incredibly illegal screen, Beckers hits a game-winning three. I was going to say, wait, that shouldn't even have counted. So, it goes both ways, and I was okay with it. Some will say I'm bootlicking officiating. When I watched it live, I was pretty pissed, but then you see the replay and you're like, you know what? That's the right call.
All right. Well, should be an entertaining women's final, but before we get to that, we have the men's Final Four, and we'll see. It seems to happen more and more in sports. If the officials are a storyline, any game that involves Zach Edey, there's certainly going to be talk about the officials on social media and Twitter throughout. So looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Let's start there with NC State against Purdue. NC State, your ACC Cinderella story after winning 5 in 5 days to win the ACC tournament. Now they've won 4 straight to get out to the desert for their Final Four. I'll kick things off with my favorite bet here. I'm going to go with DJ Burns. I know I'm going to be the party pooper. I'm going to go with DJ Burns under his point total. For what it's worth, he's gone under this total in regulation in 26 of his 40 games this year. And guess what? He's not playing against Zach Edey on a nightly basis. Major foul risk here. So his minutes, and he only plays around 60% of the minutes on the year, could be reduced even more. He's just not going to have that same size and physicality advantage that he's enjoyed in a lot of these matchups. And, when he's doing all of his moves, he's going to have to deal with Edey's length, which is just going to be difficult against a Purdue defense where it's just hard to run offense through the post. They're going to still work through Burns, but it's going to have to be his passing ability that I think impacts this game. And if he gets in foul trouble, I think he averages about 4-ish fouls per 40 minutes. I don't see him going over this total. For what it's worth, if you remove 3-pointers, and Burns has only hit 1 3-pointer on the season, only 2 big men went over this total all year against Purdue, and they both hit 16 points. So I like the under. Charlie, where you headed?
Yeah, you mentioned the attention that's going to be on Zach Edey tonight. And so as a byproduct, I'm going toward the perimeter shooting of Purdue and taking Fletcher Lawyer over 1.5 threes at plus money. He's been over this number in half the postseason games thus far, but I think that the biggest storyline is how many attempts he's had and how many open threes he's had. I think that this number should be closer to a 50-50 coin flip. NC State, we've talked about this for weeks now, just how great they've been running from the perimeter. They were outside the top 200 in three-point defense. Now all of a sudden they're still 141st after Duke, Marquette, and Texas Tech all combined to shoot 19.5% from three. And those are some good three-point shooting teams, that handful group right there. So I think that this is the game where they're going to get open threes, Purdue, because Zach Edey commands double teams. We saw it even last game against Tennessee. Lawyer had plenty of open shots. This is it's just a great spot. I think that it should not be in the plus money area. I know Nick and Sean, they project this closer to 1.7. So just a 6% edge given the plus money. I think that in this game where he's going to see 30 plus minutes per game because it's a Final Four, you mentioned just how much more these guys will end up playing. 8 of 14 to the over when he sees 30 plus minutes, over being 2 threes. So give me Fletcher Lawyer to splash from the deep.
Yeah, last 8 games, NC State opponents have shot 26.2% from 3. I mean, go back to that Marquette game. They just had countless open. No one can make an open shot against them. Prior to that 8-game stretch, over their first 32 games, team shot right around 36%, which was 300th in the country. So they've definitely benefited from some shooting variance on the defensive end. Purdue, one of 2 teams in the country that shoots over 40% from 3, can certainly make them pay. The only thing I'm a bit worried about is just the shooting lines and playing in a football stadium. And do you get funky splits here? But Purdue should get plenty of open looks here because I believe NC State's going to have to help. They can't really afford foul trouble here. They only go 7 deep. And, the crazy thing, if you look at Purdue's games, and there's a couple times where multiple big men fouled out of a game, but 29 big men fouled out against Purdue in 37 games this year. So I think NC State's going to have to help, and they're going to have to say, look, we can't let Edey just go for 40 and get our bigs in foul trouble. Can't have Burns get foul trouble. So we got to live with Purdue taking shots and hoping that they just don't go nuclear from deep. I think that's their best path, which will lead to plenty of open looks for Lawyer and company. Anthony, what are you looking at here?
Yeah, so similar in the same vein. I like the over 146. I would play 147. You're seeing the classic, like this is the Final Four. There's going to be fewer possessions baked into the number here. It's a little bit lower than it should be. And I think the one interesting angle that we haven't really talked about yet is could NC State bring a little bit of a press to try to force turnovers? When Burns is not on the floor especially, I think there's a chance that NC State pushes the tempo and tries to speed Purdue up because we've seen it be successful in the past against Purdue. When you turn Purdue over, you can have success there. Their turnover margin is still not as elite as the rest of their profile. And NC State pressed a lot during the regular season, and they were pretty good at it. The problem is that when they got into these settings where they had to win 5 and 5 and then 4 in 2 weekends, they played so many games that they stopped pressing. But they could bring it back here. They've had almost a week off, so it's not a surprise. And I do think if they get behind, which I think is going to happen, they're going to have to do something to change the game. And I think you could see extra possessions, more speeding it up, more turnovers, more easy looks for Purdue when they beat the press. They've been pretty good against the press this year. So I think that is an avenue to potential points. Purdue does struggle against teams that can hit mid-range shots. It's what Edey gives up in the drop coverage. He doesn't leave the paint ever. So if you can hit those mid-range looks, you can find success. And that's where NC State's pretty good offensively. They have pretty good shot makers. They're top 75 in spacing and shot making per shot quality. So I think there's a lot of paths to success for both offenses. Of course, like Burns is going to have a tough matchup against Edey. Getting anything at the rim against Purdue is tough, but it's not that NC State is entirely dependent on Burns. And that's why I think they've been successful is they've gotten more contributions from their non-DJ Burns players as well.
Yeah, I think it's that's one of the most fascinating angles of this game is, with games with this high stakes, coaching could have a huge impact. You could throw in a different look. You can, change something schematically. And one thing that I'm watching in this game is that press rate. Generally a Keat staple. You mentioned they abandoned it. Not only were they playing, 5 games in 5 days and then your quick turnaround of the tournament, they don't have a lot of depth. So it's hard to do that. So there's kind of 2 schools of thoughts that I have here is that, yeah, they have pressed a lot. Purdue at times can struggle with like pressure and physicality in their backcourt. But, does NC State, they want to avoid foul trouble. And do they not want to speed the game up, right? Do they want to slow it down as the underdog? But on the other side of the coin, if they get down, like you said, I think you have to go to the press at some point, which should then speed the game up a bit and should lead to some points. Nick, I know you gave out on the podcast, the other DJ Horn over points, which has moved a bit. But I'll ask you this question. Of the 2 props that myself and Charlie gave out, which of the 2 do you prefer?
Yeah, I am not going to go with my buddy Charlie here because he takes too many overs. No, I'm just kidding. Stuckey, your prop actually is, so if you look at our Action Network Pro prop tools, Your prop would be, and it's a little broken because the junior in DJ Burns Jr. Makes it so it's not displaying, but it would be the second highest edge prop that we have. And Charlie's is much further down the board at like 4.
Yeah,
he
right.
said 6%. It's like 3.9% or something. So anyway, Stuckey, I like yours. You got Zach Edey on DJ Burns Jr. and that's just a terrible matchup. Like I said, I think he's going to dish it out. Elite passer. I think he's going to dish it out the horn, maybe hand it off as, Muhammad Diarra comes in from the wing and it gets a couple slams that way or something like that. But I think DJ Burns under points is pretty solid here. I will say that, the top prop on our projections in terms of edge is DJ Horn under on his rebounds, but I don't like that simply because A, I think he's going to play a lot, and B, as Anthony talked about, he'll be shooting a lot from that mid-range. So I think there is some sneaky potential for a few extra offensive boards here than our projections are showing. So I don't mind Charlie's prop of, over 1.5 3-pointers for Fletcher Lawyer, especially because you're getting plus money. But it is a little bit thin on the value side for me, whereas Stuckey's, yours is more like 7% and Charlie's is more like 4%.
I will say, when I logged this bet and I made my notes, it was plus 130. So the odds have come down a bit. So my 6% was real. I guess it's just come down a bit since yesterday night.
You're on the sharp side. Yeah, plus 130. I like it a lot better.
I'm betting over 1.5 tweets about Fletcher Lawyer missing open threes from Charlie. That's a minus 200.
Over 4.5 tweets, minus 200 about the football stadium, and Fletcher Lawyer would have had 4 threes if they were playing in a normal stadium.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Nick does have a prop. No one hotter in the business right now coming up for the next game. But before we get to Alabama and Connecticut, if you've ever wanted to try the best version of the Action app, that time is now, because we're running a special offer on Action Pro to celebrate the NCAA tournament. You can try Pro Access for just $9.99 for the first month. With Action Pro, you get our biggest betting model edges, real-time money percentages, data-driven systems, NCAA tournament player prop projections from the predictive analytics team of Sean Kerner and Nick Giffen, and lots more. Just visit actionnetwork.com/madness to take advantage before this deal expires. That's actionnetwork.com/madness. All right, let's move on to the final game of the Final Four between Alabama and the wagon that is UConn. The Huskies have covered 10 straight games over the past 2 NCAA tournaments. They've led by at least 30 in all 4 games this tournament, and they haven't even shot the 3 that well in a handful of those games, which is just a scary thought. I'll kick things off here. I expect a big game from Tristan Newton. I like his over points, rebounds, and assists. I think that there's a lot of avenues for him to fill up the stat sheet. I expect him to play heavy minutes in a game with a lot of possessions, because you're going up against an Alabama team that ranks top 10 in the nation in adjusted tempo. And if you break down UConn's opponents this year, and if you look at teams that fell inside the top 100 in adjusted tempo, Newton went over this number 11 out of those 14 games. And none of those opponents ranked as highly as Alabama does as far as pace is concerned. So a lot of possessions here. Look, Alabama is a bad defensive rebounding team. Could be some offensive rebounds there. Newton, who is very good on the glass on the other end of the floor. I expect Alabama to shoot a ton of threes here. They're not really going to get anything in the rim. That means longer rebounds. The assists, I think, look, I mean, I can't see this Alabama defense really getting that many stops. And I mentioned the shooting struggles for UConn. If those 3s start falling, not only could Newton benefit. Newton's only 31, 32% three-point shooter, but he has hit at least 3 in 9 of his past 23 games. And, if others are hitting him, there's where the assists are going to come. Bama also fouls a lot. And Newton, excellent 83% career free throw shooter. And the most likely game state is UConn having the lead. He could get some cheap free throws late. And Alabama doesn't force turnovers. So there's just going to be plenty of opportunities for Newton to fill up the stat sheet. So I like his over points, rebounds, and assists. Charlie, you also like Mr. Newton for his assist total.
Yeah, this was the first bet that I put into the app when I saw the lines drop, and it's over 5.5 assists. It's juiced up, but I think this is a perfect ladder opportunity as
6%
well.
edge here. 6% edge.
Nick, if you can confirm, it's 5.9%. I made sure to double check. There's a 6%
It is
edge.
5.9% edge.
Thank you. Okay, there we go. So it's a 6% edge, and in general, I mean, I don't really have to say much more about Newton and just what you said. I mean, the up-tempo pace is going to lead to more possessions. We talked about the shooting regression, 3 of 17 against Illinois, 3 of 22 against Northwestern. You combine that with SDSU, that's 25% in 3 games. So I'm thinking Cam Spencer, Alex Caravan could see a couple of extra threes fall down. Tristan Newton obviously is going to see a lot of minutes because this is a do or die game, one that should be as volatile and high variance. He should see 35 plus minutes on the floor. It should be a close-ish game, at least for the majority. I would hope, unlike that 30-0 run out of UConn last time against Illinois. And Alabama, you mentioned it. Their interior defense is right around 200th. They don't force turnovers, so we'll see sustained possessions. And as long as they don't foul Klingon every single time he gets around the rim, I think that he's going to clear this 6 number with ease. And I even laddered it up to over 9.5 at plus 700. I think this is a good buy low spot on Newton, who's been under this in his last 2, but over in the 4 previous from that. So give me Newton over assists.
Yeah, he's also had double-digit rebounds in 4 of his past 11 games, so he definitely can fill it up. Yeah, my one concern, fouls, which could take away some assists because Alabama does foul a lot. And then if it's a complete and utter blowout, then his minutes might be limited. But it's the Final Four, and Nick, you brought this point up on Green Dot Daily earlier in the week, is that UConn has had so many blowouts that they're all rested, and in the Final Four, like, you maximize minutes. Like, you're not. There's only 2 games left, so unless they're up by like 40 with 10 to go, he should get plenty of action here. Anthony, what are you looking at here in this game?
What do you think the betting odds are on Dan Hurley's son getting in the game? Andrew Hurley. 20 to 1, 15 to 1. That might be worth a bet. Anyway, I'm going to go with UConn minus 5.5 in the second half. Now, I know it seems crazy and everybody's like, oh, we're whatever. But I think Alabama can throw some interesting looks at them. They can go small. They can, probably give up a ton at the rim as a result of that. But I think, as a result of going small, yes, they may hit some threes in the first half. They may force Klingon off the court more than, UConn wants to. They might make it uncomfortable for UConn in the first half. I'm interested to see what kind of moves they can make. But the problem comes at halftime when UConn can make adjustments. They've been dominant in the second half, dominant in both halves, but dominant in the second half in postseason play. That includes the Big East tournament, plus 11.4 scoring margin. And I think Alabama not willing to use the mid-range, not being able to score at the rim on Klingon will take its cumulative toll in the second half. So give me UConn in the second half, minus 5.5. I think ultimately, as this game goes on, Castle's defense on Sears is a huge plus, and they're going to really struggle to keep up as UConn just has way more options they can go to consistently score the ball in the second half, whether it's through the pick and roll or the screens or just layups because Bama has no rim defense.
Yeah, the Castle's been tremendous on that end of the floor all tournament. Just absolutely locked down Shannon. And you mentioned, I think that's ultimately the difference in this game. Alabama never shoots mid-range shots. That's what you have to do against UConn, who takes away the 3 with their drop D. I assume Alabama's still going to get up their fair share of threes, but UConn's going to be able to get so many more easy buckets and just easy offense that over the course of the game, that takes its toll. So yes, there's a chance that Alabama, you shoot 43s in this game, you make 18, you're going to have a shot, but that's very difficult to do when the other team is just getting easy 2s. And we haven't even mentioned, if UConn is making their 3s, then it's lights out. Nick, what do you got here?
Yeah, so I am going to a 6% edge myself, but I actually think this is a lot bigger than a 6% edge when we get into some of the nitty gritty. And I'm going to take Aaron Estrada for Alabama to stay under 5.5 rebounds here. And he averages 5.47 on the year, so already his average is below this. But now he faces the 12th best team in the nation in terms of schedule adjusted rebounding percentage. And not only 12th all around, but also UConn is 12th best in schedule adjusted offensive rebounding percentage. And they're the 7th best shooting team in the nation by effective field goal percentage. So obviously, players tend to get more defensive rebounds. Those are really going to be really hard to come by against UConn, who's going to be making a ton of shots. And when they do miss, they're going to be grabbing a higher portion of those rebounds, thanks to Donovan Clingan and company. Plus, this is also, Stuckey, you mentioned those extra minutes for Newton. This is a spot where Clingan's minutes will probably pop up as well. If you look at his minutes in the tournament, he has only had a maximum of 27. I'd expect at least 27 if this game is anywhere within reach, as long as he doesn't get into, pretty early foul trouble here. So there's even more downside here for Estrada just based off of Clingan's minutes. And then we also have to factor in Latrell Wrightsell is probably going to be playing, in any minutes that he does play often will come out from Estrada's minutes. So we're actually projecting Estrada for 36.5 minutes. I think it's actually going to be lower than that because Latrell Wrightsell is the number 2 most correlated player, negatively correlated to Estrada in terms of minutes. So when Wrightsell plays more, Estrada plays less, and vice versa. Second to only the very seldom used Mohamed Wagee. So I think this is a spot where Estrada's minutes downside is something maybe more like 31 or 32 minutes, which just gives him a little less opportunity to grab rebounds as well. So even though we're projecting 5.3 rebounds in 36.5 minutes, that would be a 56% chance to stay under, which is why we're getting that 6% edge at even money. It actually probably is more like 5 rebounds in maybe 31 minutes or something like that, that I think Estrada really ends up playing or having if Wrightsell does end up playing a good chunk of minutes. And I do think Alabama wants to get Wrightsell back on the court, given by percentage, he's their best 3-point shooter this season.
Yeah, also arguably their best perimeter defender. The only thing I'd worry about here is if Alabama just decides, which is probably their most likely path, is we got to shoot 43s. I mean, they average 30, but now you're getting nothing at the rim against UConn. And then there's just, they go like 7 of 38 from 3. And then there's just, 31 long offensive rebounds up for grabs. But I agree on the Wrightsell point, and just given UConn's dominance on the glass. One game this tournament, you hit like 3 or 4 under rebounding props on one team against UConn, right?
Yeah, exactly. UConn's just a spot where it's so tough to get rebounds with Clingan. Tristan Newton grabs a ton of rebounds himself. So Caravan can get a chunk. And so it's just, I mean, we even saw Cam Spencer grab double-digit rebounds in the most recent game against Illinois. So it's just a spot where UConn, just overall, a complete team that just is able to grab boards from everywhere. The biggest, like you said, the biggest threat to this would be if Alabama misses a bunch of threes, or if Clingan gets in foul trouble. Samson Johnson just doesn't have the same rebound rate that Clingan does. So that would be kind of the path for Estrada to go over here. But I still think this is a great spot where he's more like a 60% chance to stay under. So even money, good look there.
All right. By the way, we will be back on Monday for final BPOC Live, the college basketball season, the preview of the national title. We'll also be doing a podcast episode tomorrow night with our favorite bets. So make sure you check that out. Big Bets on Campus, wherever you listen to podcasts. But before we get out of here, quick question I'll pose to all of you is, it's been a very chalky tournament. All right, is anyone, I'm personally, I think it's going to be Purdue versus UConn. Anyone here? Anthony, I'll start with you. You going out on a limb on either one of the games, or is it Purdue UConn?
Purdue UConn, but I actually think Bama has a better chance to pull off an upset.
6% chance?
6%.
Yeah, Charlie?
Yeah, no, I'm chalk as well. UConn, Purdue. I'll agree with Anthony. Just the variance of the threes for Bama, I think, gives them, an outside shot if they hit 45%.
And yeah, Bama in their wins this year, 43% from 3, and their losses, 28. They might have to even up that even more going up against the juggernaut UConn if they have an off shooting night. Good luck. Nick, I'm saving you for last because you are an NC State alum. Are you picking your pack? Who's going to the national title?
Well, I'm taking UConn for sure. And then in the NC State Purdue game, I've got an interesting take on this game. I think it's going to come down to how well does DJ Horne shoot. And if he shoots really well, I think this ends up as a close game. And if he doesn't shoot well, this is more than 15 points, Purdue wins by 15 plus. So I've actually bet both of those outcomes. I've bet the game to end within 1 to 5 points, and I've bet the game to end 15 or more points in Purdue's favor. So those are the two bets that I have made. Just funsy bets, nothing, that is an official pick or anything. But that's just kind of how I feel. It's going to come down to DJ Horn, whether he's making his shots or not.
If it is NC State and UConn, spread will be around 15. I don't think
Yeah.
we've seen a spread that high in the national title, maybe since Kentucky, late 90s. I have to go back and check. But good stuff there. Thank you to Anthony, Charlie, and Nick for joining
I should say my
me.
official pick is Purdue, though.
Okay.
So, yeah, I didn't say that part.
All right. And thanks to our producers in the back. And most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Couple final reminders before we get out of here. Make sure you download the award-winning Action Network app. You can find all of our bets there in addition to an abundance of data and content for today's slate and beyond. And BBOC is presented by North Carolina's newest sportsbook, BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, that'll do it for us. Good luck on all of your wagers tonight. Enjoy the Final Four. Before you know it, we'll be only sweating baseball on Saturdays in the dog days of the summer. So enjoy the games tonight. Good luck on all of your wagers. We will see you back here on Monday, and make sure you check out the podcast tomorrow night. Cheers.